All right, so we are in part 4 of the followership series. And parts 1 and 2 have kind of hit, a lot of the theory, things you've been reading, why I believe followership is important and why it is included in a class on leadership. And part 3, we kind of went from a theoretical to an application standpoint and started talking about, well, how can we use this in our work with teams? I talk about followership a lot when I work with young teams. When a coach comes to me and say, I have 7 new players, I have 9 freshmen, right? We're going to talk about how to be a follower, the importance of being that first follower, the importance of leading yourself well as a follower. And then I also talk with teams about being a great teammate as a follower. And so last Chalk Talk on this, we looked at these 2 questions, and I asked the group, to kind of spend some time reflecting on this between then and now. I know for some of you, this is going to be new to you, but the 2 big questions when you talk about being a great teammate has to do with where you draw your value and how do you respond to hard things. So the first question, from where do you draw your personal worth? That's the value question. Are you someone that looks within for your worth? Are you someone that seeks it from without? All right. And then where do you go when things don't go your way? Whether that's an obstacle, adversity, just a bad, rough day. Where do you go when those things happen? Maybe coach isn't playing you enough, or this teammate isn't treating you the right way. Whatever that is, it's not going your way that day or overall. Where do you go? Do you stick with it, right? Or do you withdraw? And all of these with words are really intentional. Because when you are a teammate, you are with your team all the time, no matter what you're doing. So even when you are withdrawing, right, or even when you are just like, as much as I hate the grind it out, even when you are like rolling up your sleeves and going harder than you ever have before, you're still with your teammates, right? Even when you go seeking that approval elsewhere, you are still part of a team. So those are questions, and I'm just putting them on you. I think, Danielle, you're the only one in the followership 3 who's seen this before, but I asked people to like just start thinking about these questions, start becoming aware of, well, what do I do, right? Where am I getting my worth? What do I do when it doesn't go my way, right? And so we're going to come back to that. So that was the homework from last time. And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to put y'all into some breakout groups. So one of the activities I do with teams, sorry, my dog, I think the family's getting home. Pearl's losing her mind upstairs. One of the activities I do with teams when I do this workshop is a teammate interview. And I totally stole this. I read something about a parent who said, if you could only ask one question to hire a babysitter, what question would you ask? And so similar situation, if you could only ask someone one question and their answer determined whether or not you're going to ask them to be your teammate or not, right? Like one question, and yes, no, you're on the team. What question would you ask? Right. And so you want to start thinking about, well, what's important to me as a teammate? What answer am I kind of looking for? And so when you do this, you really want to stay away from yes, no responses. Like, can I trust you? So everyone's going to say yes. But instead of can I trust you, say, can you tell me about a time where you broke someone's trust and what you did to rebuild it? Right. That kind of lets them be a little bit vulnerable, tell you a story. If they say they don't have one, they've never broken anybody's trust, well, put the halo on their head, or they're probably not telling you the truth. So that's kind of the idea with this. So I'm going to put you in some small groups, and I want you to just start experimenting with some questions. Usually what happens is your question evolves as it goes, because you start hearing people's responses, and maybe it's not exactly what you were looking for. So you tweak your question a little bit, but just have a little bit of fun with it. But just one question, and then that person's answer, you get to say yes or no. A ticket on the bus, or you're leaving at the bus stop. So I'm going to do some breakout sessions and let you guys chat. Is everybody good? Anybody have any questions on what I'm asking you to do? Okay. Anybody super proud of their question? Who's super proud of their question and just has to share with us?
I'm not overly proud of my question, but I'll share.
Okay,
My question was, how would you define being a good teammate?
Okay, what kind of responses did you get?
I think the idea of kind of getting somebody would define or describe their values, what they valued as a teammate. And another thing was brought up about how like it's about being selfless in the pursuit. It's competitively selfless. It's not about yourself. It's about how you can help and support the people that you're around. I think there was a better question, I thought, even from my group. So one of those two could shoot it out there. That'd be great.
I was also in Quinn's group, and I asked, what are your top 3 values that are like most important to you and why? And I feel like that can really define what someone is like as a teammate and like a player. A couple answers I got were effort and what else? It was just like effort, selflessness, honesty, that sort of thing. And I think that really can show what kind of teammate you are.
It also, like, if you say, what are your top 3 values, and they don't have anything to say and they can't come up with anything, then that also tells you that they haven't spent any time thinking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also very telling. Anybody else? Okay, just a fun activity if you want to take it back to your groups. So we're going to talk a little bit. So anybody have any thoughts on kind of, I know I just kind of threw this on you, but like where you and you know what, we're going to get to it. You keep mulling it over. We're going to get to it. So let's break this down even a little bit more. I'm going to move y'all over here. So I'm going to talk for a little bit and then going to ask you a couple questions. And so I call this the teammate grid. And I've actually done a lot of work around this this past few months because I've been using it with a lot of groups. And I'm always learning from the groups that I work with, hopefully just as much as they're learning from me. And so I used to call this 4 types of teammates. And I've gotten away from that because I wanted to make it a little bit more fluid, because I do think that we are hopefully our best selves most of the time as teammates, but also recognizing that we are human, that we do, slip up and go to places that we don't want to be. And so we're going to talk about that here a little bit. And so I have some different categories or characteristics and categories to kind of help us increase our self-awareness as teammates. And so we're going to go through those. The first one is the foe, which you'd also be very surprised with how many young athletes don't know what foe means, but foe is a synonym for enemy. All right. But because I'm using all F words, I went with foe and not enemy. So a foe is someone as a teammate who is very much a taker, a bit of an energy vampire. I think we all know that term. Has pretty low self-awareness, which means their perception of their self doesn't really match the reality of themselves. So how they perceive themselves in the world doesn't really match with how others are receiving them. Very much excuse makers. They spread thought. And then you can think of one right now. And by spread thought, I mean, they're the ones in the locker room, typically running their mouths, right? They're spreading opinion. It's not actually fact. And they're not actually doing anything except just running their mouths, right? A foe, I feel like out of all these are the easiest ones to identify. And if you've been playing sports long enough, you've probably played either against or with someone. My example of the foe is Lord Voldemort. He should not be named, from Harry Potter. Voldemort, very confident, very much gathering his value from within himself. Know he's got the goods, right? But he is withdrawn from the right side of society, right? And is using his powers for evil. So that is the foe. Y'all kind of getting the gist of where I'm going with this. All right, so moving down, we're going to go to the fan. So a fan, someone who still is pretty much withdrawn, but is seeking approval and value outside of themselves. And so a fan is someone partially invested. Their investment also hinges greatly on success. When the team's winning, they're on board, right? They're looking for quick fixes. They don't really do the hard work. They're just looking for the little band-aids. They're easily disgruntled because they are looking for the quick fixes and they don't last. They move on quickly to whatever the next thing is. And they're usually the first person in the locker room who starts paying attention to what the foe is saying when the foe starts running his or her mouth. All right. My example of fans are the hyenas from Lion King, who were Team Scar all the way until it wasn't good for them to be Team Scar anymore. And they moved on to the next thing and they turned on him. So sliding over, so still seeking approval, looking for a value without, but we're more sticking with it a little bit better. Okay. We're talking about the friend. A friend is socially minded, seeking approval. You get a lot of significance from what you're doing online. You're a pleaser, but you're never pleased with yourself. You're a comparer, and you're usually the click instigator, right? Because you need those people around you to tell you how good you are. And so you go out looking for those folks. Friend example would, and how the dynamics between friends would be the movie Mean Girls and Regina George and her group. Lastly, we have the follower. Ta-da! Okay, the follower, someone who gets their value from within themselves, very self-assured, know they're talented, know they have purpose, pretty self-aware, right? And they're someone who sticks with it when things don't go their way. They vulnerably trust, they're endlessly willing to try different things or new things. This doesn't work this way, so let me try it this way. Problem solvers, right? Not problem staters. They're reason givers instead of excuse makers, right? They put others first. They make things better and they spread action. So instead of being in the locker room running their mouth, they're the one that's like, hey, I see you struggling with this play. I see you struggling with this movement. Like, let's get out on the court or on the field and do something about it. My follower, my ideal teammate's Dory. She's my ideal everything. So at this point, you're kind of looking at this grid, right? There's a lot of info on here. The questions that I asked 2 questions, and I kind of told you them beforehand. Where do you think you fall right here? Like if this was a grid, right? And you have these 2 axes right here, where do you think you fall most of the time as a teammate? Okay. Are you pulling from within and you're sticking with it? And so you find, can y'all see my mouse if I do that? All right. So maybe you're like right here. You might not be all the way out here most of the time, right? But you're right here. Okay. Your confidence is coming from within yourself, right? Your self-efficacy, and you're sticking with it. You're not going as hard as you possibly can or doing all this as best as you possibly can, but maybe you're right here. And then where do you go on the days and the moments that you wish you could have them back, right? So here's who we are most of the time as a teammate. But then there's those moments, God, I wish I could have that back. I really wasn't my best self. Such and such happened. I didn't put my best self forward. I went to this place and I wish I could have that day back, that practice back, that moment back, right? So those are the 2 questions. I'm going to put y'all in one big group to talk about it. And I'll leave this on the screen. Y'all can still see this when you're in breakout rooms. Hopefully. If you can't, let me know. Maybe I can screenshot and put on the chat. All right, so I'm going to, actually, I'm just going to unmute. I'm going to mute myself and turn my video off and let y'all chat. I'm going to go upstairs and say hi to my family and I'll be back.
What was the question?
The question is essentially like where you fall on the, and also like when things are good versus when things are bad. It's been a long time since I've played or been an active athlete. I think when I was an active athlete, I was more likely on the friend side of things, maybe pretty close to the follower line, maybe getting above it sometimes. But I was definitely a comparer of my performances to, anybody else. I definitely did want approval. As I moved into the coaching role, like I certainly like to think of myself as in that follower area. But I also know that it fluctuates for me, not necessarily all the way down below the line, but like, I think like everybody wants things to go well and to be successful and stuff. And I certainly think that coaches have to put others first because that's your job. But to say that I'm always there, I think would be a little naive. So I'm definitely somewhere in that follower friend zone for the most part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Sorry.
I feel like when it comes to like something like conditioning, I could be like a fan. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what, whatever. But like when it comes to other stuff that interests me more, I'm more of a follower in the sense of it makes me feel good once I do it. But like in the moment, I feel like sometimes you kind of can lose track.
Yeah, I feel like being in a GA type role, it's easy to be a friend, just because like I feel like you're always kind of seeking approval from those that are, on the staff and are paid. You're always just trying to like, you're new to it, like especially so like I know Quinn, you said you've been coaching for a long time. For me, like this is my first year in college football, like coaching. So like I feel like I'm always trying to like seek approval. I'm always kind of comparing myself to like other people rather than like looking within myself and saying like, well, look at where I was, a year ago and where I am now. And so I think that like over the past like month or two, I've been trending a lot more towards follower. But I think this year I've been pretty consistently in the friend side of it. I know like sometimes I have a tendency to kind of, go in the middle between like fan and foe though. On those like really bad days where like I'll just like kind of get myself in a headspace where I kind of suck the energy out of the room. And that's something that I really have to work on is, especially like when I have to like take criticism. That's something that I think that starting to be a leader is understanding that like not all criticism is bad criticism and that, it can be helpful and not getting in a headspace where you're an energy vampire.
Y'all ready for me to be back?
Yep, welcome back.
Thanks. I'm actually, with what's going on upstairs, really happy to be here with y'all. So what kind of things did y'all talk about? I came back towards the end of Caleb wrapping up, so.
Just kind of like how different roles that we've been in, we've found ourselves on like different parts of the teammate grid, like how going from like the perspective of a player to a coach can kind of shift where you like find yourself.
Isn't it interesting? It's like all the things, all the problems that you were as an athlete. Now all of a sudden you're not that at all, right? You did everything right and do all the right things for your athletes to be doing. So yeah, that's funny. I get that. So I just really wanted to show y'all a way to kind of use what you're learning and hopefully apply it to what you're doing. This is another example of kind of your LTP, right? You're taking a theory, you're taking an issue, and you're using it to address that, right? So what I would normally do is, okay, so you spend your time as a teammate mostly here, right, where you want to be, but then sometimes there are moments where you really wish you could have them back and you're in this other place you don't want to be. So in drawing self-awareness to, well, what's prompting you to go away from who you want to be? All right, I call it like you slide, you go somewhere else. Maybe you are really confident and get, you know your self-worth from within, you draw it, you have a really good meditation practice. Maybe you're very confident in your preparation, right? And your training, but then things don't start going your way. And so you go and call your mama and you need your mama to tell you how good you are, right? So maybe you slide from that within to that without, or maybe you slide from that I'm going as hard as I can, but I'm still not getting the playing time that I want. And so, well, then it's just coach's fault. So I'm going to withdraw and isolate, and you know what that does? Takes people with them. And you know what that does? It distracts your team, and it's a really selfish act because then you're taking away your teammates' attention from what they should be doing because now they're working on you worried about you and why you're withdrawing. So I call that sliding. And so drawing your athlete's attention to like, well, what's going on there? Like what's causing you to slide? And then how do we bounce back? What's your plan for getting yourselves back? You're not going to stop sliding ever, right? We're human. We're going to mess up. We're going to get frustrated. Things are not going to go our way all of the time. But hopefully with this exercise, you start drawing attention to, well, what are the things that are causing me to slide so I can be aware of them and ready for them? And how do I get back to who I want to be quicker, right? So that would kind of be like a bounce back plan, right? You want to talk about that as resilience or grit or whatever trendy word. I just call it sliding and bouncing. That's what makes sense. Or when you're the yellow minion or the purple minion, right? How do you get back from purple to yellow? So I just wanted to share this with y'all as a way to kind of wrap up this whole series. These 2 questions are really good if you're trying to get deep with this. You circle up your group, and you can do it in small groups, maybe position groups, or you can do the whole group. First question is giving the athlete an opportunity to say, well, who do you need to be for your team? And they share that. Like, here's who I need to be as a teammate. And then their teammates around them answer the question, well, what's it like to be on the other side of me? What's it like to be my teammate? What's it like to be with me in practice, in the training room, in the weight room, in the locker room, in our living quarters, out socially, you know, all those things. What's it like to be doing this with me as your teammate? So the athlete gets a chance to share their piece, and then they get to hear from their teammates. And it can get, you know, hopefully if you've set it up well, it can be really productive. And athletes talk really openly and vulnerably with each other. And that's pretty much how I wrap up this workshop. So hopefully this is helpful. You know, I tried to do something a little bit different, not just another boring kind of lecture, because you've had enough of those from me. Does anybody have questions on this or anything else pertaining to the class before we move into Thanksgiving break? Because I will be out of pocket next week. Danielle won't be, but I will be.
What is you will be out of pocket next week mean?
I'll be juggling in-laws and children
There
while y'all
you go.
practice and play games and watch film.
Got it.
No, I'll be available. I forget that we're going to St. Thomas for a basketball tournament. I keep forgetting that it's the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so we'll be in the country. It'll be good. You can text me. So, but does anybody have any questions? Comments, thoughts for this or LTP?
Or
All right.
the
Yeah.
personal, like the philosophy, right? That's due this weekend, right?
Yeah, it's due Sunday.
Due
So
Sunday, yeah.
SWOT analysis, a supporting narrative. So put your SWOT on that table. Supporting narrative doesn't have to be super long. Just tell me what I'm kind of looking at or your process behind it. And then philosophy and style with the requirements in those 2 sections. I
So do you
encourage
want-
you. Yeah, Caleb.
Sorry. Do you want the actual like SWOT grid in it as well?
Yes, I want to be able to look
and-
at it.
So do you want us like 5 pages of writing plus the SWOT grid plus the plus the references?
Yeah, your title page and your references don't count towards the 5 pages.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. And with the references, and so like I've started looking, some folks have turned theirs in already. I'm asking you to use 2 theories from the class. And so I'm really hoping that there's some material cited from the class that shows me that you've done the reading. And it's not just a Forbes article about authentic leadership. We're in grad school. I know I didn't say that specifically in the instructions, but throw some Nordhaus in there, throw some George in there. So throw some Evolio. I'm just using all the authentic leadership people, but like if say two sources from class, well, hopefully there's some class materials too. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Y'all have a great night. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wait, Jana,
Yeah.
when someone says
Let me stop recording.